Following up on the heels of Hourglass Cosmetics Vanish Stick Foundation, they have released a new liquid foundation version of the stick for spring 2019. This foundation is marketed as a highly pigmented, a full coverage foundation. It's supposed to be sweat proof, transfer proof. I like to say all the proofs, just like think of like unbreakable. It's not going to come apart. It's supposed to be almost like a second skin for your own skin. They also state, the brand states, no primer is needed. Foundation retails for $56 and there are about 32 shades available. Now when it comes to the actual shade range, based on your existing stick foundation shade, if you happen to use it, my stick foundation shade is Golden Almond. That is the shade that they recommend you go to first in the liquid version. I received the liquid foundation in an actual Sephora perk. Golden Almond was one of the shades available, so that's what it looks like. So I was able to, well, I still have a ton left, so I think this is a pretty good size for you to test it out and see if you like it. Vanish Stick Foundation was also marketed in a very similar manner to the liquid foundation. So the claims for the stick foundation, I already reviewed it, so it will be in the cards if you want to take a look. Claims that it is supposed to be highly pigmented as well. You don't need a lot. It will cover skin imperfections, but still give off that skin-like appearance and a natural finish. Therefore, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the liquid version is probably going to be a better version of the stick foundation. I still stand by my review for the stick foundation that it did not offer enough pigment. I still don't think it does. I think that the finish on the the finish for the foundation is what I would consider a natural finish for this stick. However, it's something that I continue to use as just something really quick. Swipe it on, blend it out, and go out the door. That's the sole purpose of that stick. Would it have been something that I would have picked up on my own? No, it was actually given to me from Influencer, but it's also not a stick foundation I personally would recommend to pick up. I'm gonna go ahead and let you know my experience from day 1 through 4. Today marks the 5th day of me wearing the foundation, so let's trail back to day 1. Now day 1, I do not wear a primer regardless with any new foundation that I am testing out. I want to see how it's going to react to my own skin oils. Is it going to change in color? Just want to test it out that route. Which is actually good because this foundation is marketed as no primer needed. Looking at my notes, I do have in here that I did not notice a change in color. Once it dried on my skin, it did match my skin tone perfectly. What I did notice was that I kept staring at a certain region on my face where I'm not used to seeing large pores, and that's just in this region right here, like by the sides of the nose, and it kind of goes up. For day 2 of testing out the foundation, I decided to pull in an actual primer. I was just curious. I wanted to see how it would work with the brand's own primer, so I pulled out my Veil Mineral Primer from Hourglass, still working from the deluxe size sample. So I press and pat that into my skin. That was a big mistake. I also felt that I used a little bit too much foundation because, you know, there's no pump, and it does state in the description to use only half a pump because it's so concentrated with pigment. That's what they're claiming. So this sample, of course, is not going to have a pump. It just has one of those little, you know, doe foot applicators. So I'm putting that on my skin, and what I'm doing is I'm taking the excess away and just wiping it on my microfiber cloth, wiping it off and going back into my skin to reapply it. Even though I'm taking the excess off, I'm seeing where the foundation is kind of just like sitting there. I remember looking in the magnifying mirror, almost kind of like seeing little holes. Anyways, that's what I saw. So I'm blending it out, and I'm thinking, this feels dry. Here's a close-up shot after it's all blended out, but I felt, looking in the magnifying mirror, that it just looked too heavy. Not even so much as heavy. Let me backtrack. It looked dry is what it looked like, and as a result, on my face, I felt that it looked like it was heavy. When I look dry, I feel like my makeup is really heavy. I know, it's silly, but that's just what I feel. But of course, I'm going to go about and see how it's going to wear. Now, that day, I did run a 2-mile run in the gym on the treadmill. And I thought, oh great, I sweat when I run. So I thought this would be great to test out the sweat proof and the transfer proof. The very first time I dabbed right here, and I looked at the towel. I go, oh, I don't see anything. Okay, that's pretty good. So as I'm running and I'm continuing, I dab on my forehead and I dab on my chin and in this region, and there's only a tiny bit on the towel. That I was impressed by then, because when I finished the run and I'm on the towel, I'm like, wow, still practically rubbing all the makeup off. Not all of it, because you're going to see it. So here's the footage when I got back in front of the camera to show you. I thought everything stayed pretty good. I'm shocked. I'm surprised that it just stayed up. I mean, I am, look at my forehead. I'm sweating. I'm going to get up a little bit closer. Here's an even closer look. I feel for a high intensity 2-mile run, that looks great. Looks like the other products are holding up well too. I mean, as far as the blush, the highlighter, I mean, the review isn't about that. The mascara, the eyeshadow is underneath, looks completely smeared, but that's pretty good. All right, Hourglass. All right, Hourglass. Liquid Vanish. The next day, I went ahead and decided, okay, first off, I'm not going to do it with this primer. I'll just do it with my regular moisturizer. So I put on the Amore Pacific Fluid Lotion. I put that on. And I said to myself, I'll just use a tiny amount. We're talking a tiny amount on my spatula. But I also will just go like this. Boop, boop. That's it. Blending it out and spreading anything excess around my face. So that's what I was doing for day 3 and day 4. I noticed that when I would go back in with just a little bit of the liquid to cover up the dark marks, first off, it didn't cover it completely. So the full pigment, the full concentrated is, again, it's not there. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, you already were lying about it with the stick foundation. I don't expect it to in the liquid. So I wasn't too surprised. For day 3 and day 4, it did settle in the smile lines. This is day 5. I already looked, it's already kind of just stayed up in there, and I barely am putting it around in this region. So I'm not liking how day 3 and day 4 is looking. Even though with a tiny amount of foundation, I just don't like how it sits on the skin. It seems to emphasize something that is, to be honest, not even there. Today I used a totally different product. I used the Max Glow Serum Press Primer. This is a dewy, turn your foundation into a nice thunderstorm product. It's right up my alley. So I pressed and pat this in my skin. I said, okay, if this foundation does not turn into a dewy little slick on my face, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. So I mixed it in, and it thinned it out. It thinned it out. And I mean, it's covered, but it's not covering up the dark spots, first off. I go back in after I set the concealer, and I go back in to add a little bit more. And I'm seeing where it's lifting up on the skin. Now, I don't have any patches there, so I'm like, okay, I'm done. So I stopped it, and I took the Vanish and dipped in, and I used the Vanish Stick Foundation to kind of cover it up some, but it's not completely covered. I'm just leaving it here for you to see. I'm over it. And I'm just glad it came in the size sample, and I didn't have to go through, getting a sample at Sephora. So I'm actually going to take it off before I go running and be done with it. I definitely feel when you market a product, a new complexion product, and state that it is highly concentrated, fully pigmented, full coverage, this, that, and the other, that it needs to deliver. And that is how I am going to base my claims against. I'm going to go through all that criteria. It's still the same, just like how it was with the Vanish. So the liquid foundation version of it does not offer enough pigment, in my opinion, to cover up skin imperfections. I would think you'd have to have minor skin imperfections. But let's say you want to start building it up, even though I'm just building up in the dark spot region, I feel that it's just looking too heavy. it's going to look too heavy on the skin. But that is my skin preference. I want it to be skin-like, so it might just be a personal criteria, you know, for yourself. The finish is natural, but it's unnatural the way it sits on the skin and the way it performs throughout the day. It's not natural. So I wasn't happy about that. I feel the only claim that this foundation can go, oh yes, I do this, is the transfer and the sweat proof. Now, it's not 100%, but it's enough where I was like, oh, okay, yeah. That claim is probably true. So what do you think? Did you pick up the little perk here? Have you been trying it? How's it working on your skin? Also leave your skin type. I'm curious. I'm curious to see oily skin people what this foundation is going to be and look like on you. I haven't watched any reviews, shocking, yet on this foundation, but I will after I'm done with this. I'll go take a look and kind of see what everybody else's experience is. But that's mine. Wasn't good. So I will be taking this off before I go for my run and tossing this. And I actually am also going to toss this because this is just, it's too drying for me as well. So that is my experience and the review for Hourglass's new Vanish Liquid Foundation. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching, everyone. I do appreciate it. Have a wonderful day or evening. And as always, I'm going to see you in the next video. Goodbye, everyone.